And what has been one of the biggest stories certainly this week, DA MP Andrew Whitfield says he is still in the dark about why he was fired as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa's office confirmed Whitfield's removal yesterday without providing reasons. The presidency has also dismissed speculation of an imminent cabinet reshuffle. Take a listen.
I haven't been provided with any formal reasons for my removal other than to say that the president is exercising his constitutional right in terms of section 93(1) of the constitution. And as you say, he thanked me for my service, and that was the end of a very short and unexpected letter.
All right, reaction for you now. Let's bring in Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. And I've got the statement from the Presidency here in front of me. It's, in fact, the first couple of lines of that statement deals with exactly what Andrew Whitfield had to say, that he wasn't provided reasons. The President says it's not common practice for the President of the Republic to provide reasons either for the appointment or dismissal of members of the executive.
Michelle, good afternoon and good afternoon to your viewers. I think the crux of the president's statement is to first assert his constitutional prerogative in this regard with respect to the hiring and the removal of members of the national executive. Secondly, to also deal directly with the unnecessary and inflammatory statements that were made
All right, I'm going to
with the president having on both the issue of removal and the reasons behind it. But
Vincent, go ahead, please. We were interrupted by just what seems to be a slow network connection, but please do continue.
I was saying, secondly, the president had mentioned to Minister Steenhuisen that he will be awaiting a name for his approval from the DA, which then speaks to the commitment to have that portfolio or that role in the national executive still being allocated to the DA as part of the agreement that saw the formation of the government of national unity. It was therefore unpalatable and unnecessary for Mr. Steenhuisen to then give the president ultimatums as he did. And it was important for the president to clarify that and accept his constitutional prerogative.
Mr. Magwenya, I'm really confused because the statement from the presidency says prior to the removal of Whitfield, this is a quote from the president, I informed Minister John Steenhuisen as leader of the DA that I decided to remove Mr. Whitfield from his position and that I expect him to present to me for approval a replacement. And that's exactly what you've said. Now, what John Steenhuisen said in Parliament yesterday is, this is also a quote, the president did not have the decency to discuss this decision with its main GNU partner.
Well, you can then take it from the president's statements, Michelle, that the president is refuting that claim by Minister Steenhuisen, and he is challenging it, referencing the conversation that he had with Minister Steenhuisen. It remains the president's expectation that Minister Steenhuisen will furnish him with a name for his approval and consideration for appointment into the national executive.
So the statement by the president, Mr. Magwenya, also talks about precedent, because essentially the reason why Andrew Whitfield was fired as deputy minister is for undertaking international travel without the president's permission. And I understand the president has also gone into precedent in previous administrations where ministers were also fired for this very reason.
Not only does the president goes into the precedents and the history where you have similar decisions being taken by his predecessors, but he also details at length how these rules and practices were shared with all new ministers and deputy ministers during the course of their induction into cabinet, how these were affirmed by the president in the first cabinet meeting or during a subsequent period following the induction. And so it is important that the president provides that clarification that the reference for this decision is not only the precedents, is the fact that these are rules and practices that are well known to all ministers and deputy ministers as members of the National Executive.
So, Mr. Magwenya, what do you make of the argument that the president has taken a while to act on certain ministers in his cabinet, even those who are named in the state capture report, even how the former justice minister misled Parliament and was simply moved to another portfolio. The case of the higher education minister, Dr. Nobushle Nkabane, and her behavior in Parliament also comes to play. How does the president weigh up these various issues? Clouds of corruption, misleading Parliament, and then undertaking international travel without the authorization of the president. The president was very quick to act on Andrew Whitfield.
On the contrary, Michelle, there are those that feel that the president took his time in acting against Mr. Whitfield. Be that as it may, I think we are totally unrelated matters here. Back to the matters you reference, albeit inaccurately, there was no finding that Minister Smelane misled Parliament. And as you know, that issue was a historical issue. There was a sanction by the relevant authority at the time. You reference generally what I will assume are ministers and deputy ministers that have been implicated in the zonal report who have taken that report on review. And so those are processes that are still underway and that have not been concluded. Therefore, the president will not be expected to act against those individuals. Here, you have a very straightforward case of violations of the rules, and the president has acted accordingly.
Mr. Magwenya, does the president have a double standard in dealing with MPs depending on which party they belong to, they're affiliated to?
No, he doesn't. I mean, Michelle, you'll recall that there was a minister who still serves in our cabinet who was found to have been on the wrong side of the COVID regulations. The president acted against that minister. It was a minister from his party, the ANC. And so, no, the president does not have a double standard. Where he needs to engage a process against a minister, he does so. And he acts accordingly based on the information, the evidence, and the outcome of the process that he will have engaged. And so it is entirely false to accuse the president of any double standard just because he has taken action against someone who's from the DA.
Can I get your response on this on behalf of the president as well? What Andrew Whitfield contends is that the presidency actually failed to respond to multiple follow-ups on his travel request. He says he did his part, but it was the presidency that never got back to him. What's your response to that?
Well, Michelle, it is no longer of any help to go on a tit-for-tat with Mr. Whitfield's sessions in this route. The decision has already been taken. What remains is the fact that he traveled internationally without permission from the president. He should have known that without such express permission, that trip was not supposed to have been undertaken. But at this stage, it doesn't help us to go on a tit-for-tat with him, except that the rules that he violated are clear, and they're clear to him. Hence, he wrote an apology to the president, apologizing for his action. And secondly, when Mr. Steenhuisen, as the president mentions in his statement, when Mr. Steenhuisen was informed of the intention to remove Mr. Whitfield, he said Mr. Whitfield was expecting the sanction. And so that's why the statement from the president is so important in clarifying the facts as well as the actions that took place leading up to the president's final decision.
Yeah, in fact, the presidency's statement calls the letter of apology from Whitfield a perfunctory letter. So, Mr. Magwenya, what now for this deadline that the DA has given the ANC, effectively, the Government of National Unity, this 48 deadline, which was announced by the DA leader yesterday?
No, with all due respect to the DA and its leader, Minister Steenhuisen, there is no deadline. There are no ultimatums that the president will abide by. He has communicated his decision. He is expecting Mr. Steenhuisen to furnish him with a name for his approval and for consideration with respect to appointment into the national executive. And so that issue of a deadline and ultimatum is a moot point as far as the president is concerned.
Vincent Magwenya is the spokesperson for the presidency. Mr. Magwenya, thanks for joining us. It's all around the issue of the removal of Andrew Whitfield from the position of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Quite a fiery response by DA leader John Steenhuisen yesterday, and really conflicting accounts from Mr. Steenhuisen and then what the presidency has said about whether or not this was discussed with the DA prior to the decision being announced that Andrew Whitfield would be removed.